French manager Pierre Sage is officially the new manager of Crystal Palace, and personally, I think this is a great appointment. This year at Lens, he was able to push them into second place in Ligue 1, competing with PSG the entire year and managed to win the Ligue 1 Manager of the Year. So I think this appointment could mark a new beginning at Crystal Palace, despite having super talented players like Michael Olise, Marc Guéhi, Zaha, and Eberechi Eze. As since being promoted in 2013, their best finish in the Premier League was only 10th. But today, that is all going to change. I'm going to take over Crystal Palace as their new manager Pierre Sage, and using his tactical style of play, rebuild the club all the way to a Champions League title. Sit back, relax, and let's get into it. At FC Lens, Pierre Sage would primarily line up in a 3-4-3 formation while attacking, and while defending, drop back into a 5-2-3. So to recreate that in FIFA, we're going to be starting in the defensive shape in the 5-2-3. But in-game, it looks more attacking, just like Pierre Sage's Lens, with the fullbacks pushing more up the field, as well as the wingers cutting more inside. And because we are Crystal Palace, we unfortunately had to lose some of our best players. In real life, the French defender Lacroix is heavily linked to a move to Stamford Bridge. So just like what might happen in real life, we're losing our best defender to Chelsea, where he's joining them for 40 million. We also lost one of our best attacking players, versatile winger Ismaila Sarr. He left to Arsenal for 33 million. And finally, probably our best young prospect on this team, 22-year-old Adam Wharton has been dragged away from the club and a big move to Manchester United for 50 million. So after losing 3 of our best players, we desperately needed to strengthen this team. So we first started off by signing 3 center backs that can definitely help us out in the future. We first signed a French center back from FC Lens using that Pierre Sage connection. We were able to pick up Eshmelio Geniu from Lens for 13.6 million. I also wanted to bring in a center back who was left-footed to play on the left side of our 3-back. So to do this, we brought in Noble Mendy from Rayo Vallecano for 30 million. And our final center back we brought in was someone linked to the club in real life. We're bringing in Englishman Charlie Cresswell from Toulouse for 24 million. Next, we decided to sign some midfielders to really strengthen this team. First, starting off with a Belgian that is linked to the club in real life, we signed Arnie Engels from Celtic for 14 million. As well as a huge transfer, more representing an Adam Wharton replacement, we're going to be signing Swiss breakout star from Freiburg, Johan Manzambi for 43 million. Next up, we brought in someone to replace Sarr as our brand new right winger, so we went ahead and signed Brazilian youngster William Gomez from Porto for 40 million. And finally, bringing in a backup right back who is also linked to the club, Englishman Ainsley Maitland-Niles from Lyon for 10.5 million. So after all that business, this is what the team now looks like. We got a whole lot younger, having 5 of our new signings into the starting 11. However, we would not get off to a great start, as we would go on to lose our first 3 Premier League matches in a 2-1 loss to Newcastle, a 2-0 loss to Manchester United, and a 3-2 loss to Nottingham Forest. But surprisingly, our first win of the season would come against an unlikely opponent, as we would get the better of Manchester City in a 2-1 victory. And really, it seemed like this team needed a little bit of time to gel, as our form throughout the first half of the season was completely average, finding ourselves in 13th in the table on Christmas Day with exactly 6 wins, 6 draws, and 6 losses, with a goal difference of exactly 0. Our form, however, would improve, primarily spearheaded by our French striker Jean-Philippe Mateta, who would finish in 5th place for the Premier League Golden Boot with 17 goals, along with our Spanish left winger Yermi Pino, who would bag 22 goal contributions in all competitions, as well as our fantastic new midfield duo, as both Arnie Engels and Manzambi would improve significantly in overall throughout the season, thanks to our solid form from February to April, where we only lost 2 matches. We would improve our position in the table and finish in 9th place at the end of the Premier League season. But in the Cups, we did not do so well, as in the FA Cup we were knocked out in round 3 to Manchester United, and in the Carabao Cup we made it to round 4 but lost to Manchester City. And we were in the Europa League for this season, as we did win the Conference League last year, year against Real Vallecano, but unfortunately we wouldn't get off to a great start as we would draw our first 3 matches, tying matches against Union Saint-Gilloise, Roma, and AS Monaco, as well as losing games that we should be winning to APOL and Sparta Prague. But luckily, we would win our very last game of the Europa League phase against Norwegian side Molde, sneaking us into the playoff round after finishing in 23rd place at the end of the league phase. However, in the league phase, we would run into a familiar opponent in FC Porto, where across 2 legs, they would get the best of us, knocking us out 4-2 on aggregate. So overall, a solid first season in charge, but I'm hoping for this team to perform a lot better in the very near future. And so for Season 2, we only sold a single player. It was our Colombian right back Munoz, who we sent to Manchester City for 40 million. And in turn, his replacement, we signed a player who proved he can be an attacking fullback at this World Cup. We signed Serginho Dest from Sevilla in this save for 50 million. Next, we went out and signed a left back who can compete for the starting role with Mitchell. We went out and signed Spanish left back Alex Vele from Como for 34 million. And finally, we signed another center mid for some depth, a player linked to the club in real life. We signed Jordan James from Stade Rennais for 14.5 million. So after all that business, this is what the team now looks like. We only really improved our fullbacks, as I'm really trying to let the rest of this team grow. And once again, in the Premier League, the season started off very slow, as we would only win 2 out of our first 10 matches of the Prem season, with a 3-2 victory against Brentford and a 3-1 win against West Ham. But in early November, something clicked. We would go on an absolute tear, winning our next 8 out of 9 Premier League matches throughout November and December, including huge wins against Nottingham Forest, Fulham, Bournemouth, and Tottenham Hotspurs. This surge in form would jump us straight up into 7th place in the Premier League on January 1st. And in the second half of the season, our form would continue, not losing many games, but our draws would significantly pick up. Our front attacking 3 was a big part of our amazing form, as Yeremy Pino was our top goal scorer with 23 goals and 8 assists in all competitions, as well as our right winger William Gomez with 18 goals and 8 assists, as well as our French striker Mateta with 18 goals. These players would help us with 2 huge victories late in the season against Arsenal and Manchester City, meaning we finished the Premier League season in 6th place, qualifying us for the Conference League, which we would later find out was actually a Europa League qualification. In the Carabao Cup, we did terribly, getting knocked out to Hull City in round 3. However, in the FA Cup, we made a really deep run, picking up notable victories against Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth, making it all the way to the FA Cup final, where we would be playing Brighton. But unfortunately, they would get the best of us, beating us 2-1, and we would unfortunately miss out on our first major trophy. So despite being so close to winning a trophy last year, the team is shaping along nicely. And for Season 3, we started off with a couple of departures. Brennan Johnson was upset about his playing time at the club, so we sold him. He's headed off to Inter for 40 million. We also sold Doucouré, as he wasn't really getting any playing time, to Galatasaray for 11.1 million. And finally, our biggest departure was our French striker Jean-Philippe Mateta. As he's approaching the twilight years of his career, he deserves to play some Champions League ball, so we sold him to AC Milan for 80 million. So with Mateta leaving the club, we needed a new striker. So to do that, we headed to France to Saint Etienne, and we signed Belgian striker Lucas Stassen for 50 million. Next, we signed a Brennan Johnson replacement. We signed Dutch left winger Ruben van Bommel from PSV for 34 million. Next, we used the profits from our departures to sign a huge center back for us, signing French center back Lukeba from Leipzig for 60 million. As well as we also picked up a young goalkeeper, Madeline Yerkas, from FC Lugano for 14 million, who we would also loan out to Monaco for the next 2 seasons. So now after all those transfers, this is what the team now looks like, with the main differences being our star center back Lukeba playing the left center back spot for us, as well as our new Belgium striker Stassen, who we can only hope can be anywhere near as good as Mateta. But it seemed like our new striker Stassen needed a little bit of time to adjust, as throughout the first half of the season, he and the rest of the team were struggling. As by January 1st, our striker Lucas Stassen only had 2 goals and 2 assists, and in the Premier League, we were sat in a disappointing 14th place. But in the Europa League, it was a completely different story. By the end of the league phase, we had finished in 9th place, only losing a single game, and in the second half of the season, we would go on a deep run. We would beat Victoria Plzen in the playoff round, beating out Galatasaray in the round of 16, getting the best of Roma in the quarterfinals, as well as beating out RB Leipzig in the semifinals to punch a ticket to the Europa League final, where in that final we would be playing against another German side in Frankfurt. So this was it, a Europa League trophy on the line, but more importantly, a ticket to the Champions League for next season, which we desperately need. This was going to be no easy game, and for the Europa League final, we decided to stop and play it ourselves. And it would take all the way until the 40th minute for us to have a good chance. Lucas Stassen would find William Gomez out wide with acres of space. He would drive into the space, but unfortunately would not get his shot off just in time for their center back to come across and clear it, which meant that when halftime rolled around, the game was still 0-0. And in the second half, William Gomez had another great chance, but once again, I would choke with William Gomez, opting to ball roll inside and get tackled. But in the 78th minute, it would all click. We would work the ball in from out wide, and one pass would find William Gomez, who would ball roll past his defender, and with an incredible angle, hit his shot far post past Frankfurt's goalie, giving us our first lead. An incredible angle on a shot for someone who definitely deserved to score in this match. And only a couple minutes later, Manzambi would find Serginho Dest out wide with acres of space. He would be able to sweat it across to Lucas Stassen, who would tap in a very easy shot, giving us a 2-0 lead. Which meant that when the final whistle blew, we had won the Europa League final 2-0 over Frankfurt, not only giving the club their best piece of European silverware up to this point, but as well qualification to the UEFA Champions League for next season, and one step closer to our goal of winning a UCL final. And looking back at the Premier League, our form would improve. Our Spanish left winger Yermi Pino would bag 21 goals and 10 assists across all competitions, as well as our right wing William Gomez would have a breakout year scoring 20 goals and 10 assists, and even our Belgian striker Stassen would improve, bagging 14 goals and 7 assists by the end of the season. However, due to a final month collapse, we would finish the Premier League season in 12th. But luckily, it wouldn't matter that much because we did qualify for the Champions League for Season 4. And so for Season 4, the team was looking pretty good, but I still wanted to bring in some big talent to help us out in our first season in the Champions League. But first, we made some departures out of the club. First, we sold right back Ainsley Maitland-Niles to Nottingham Forest for $13 million, as well as the Croatian left back Sosa to Sheffield United for $4.1 million, and finally, English striker Nketiah to Coventry City for $9.4 million. In terms of our transfers, we started off with a new goalkeeper who could potentially compete with Dean Henderson in the near future. We ended up signing the Frenchman Robin Rieser from In This Save Marseille for $60 million, as well as we also brought in a backup right back, bringing in Spanish right back Hector Fort in this save from Porto for $33 million, which meant that our starting 11 didn't change at all, but I was still feeling confident because I really liked the look of this team. And before the transfer window even ended, we got our first piece of silverware, as we would win the UEFA Super Cup after a 3-3 game, which we won on penalties. And during the first half of the season, we were performing well. Our striker Lucas Stassen was still struggling, but our wingers were by far making up for it, which meant that by January 1st, we were sat in a solid 8th place in the Premier League. But where we were really shining was in the Champions League, as we crushed through the Champions League league phase, finishing in first place, winning 7 matches and only losing 1, which meant that we were automatically into the round of 16, where we would play Bayer Leverkusen, and we would easily get by them, beating them 4-2 on aggregate. But in the quarterfinals, we had a very difficult opponent in Real Madrid.
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me!
But to my surprise, in the first leg, we would get the best of them, beating them 1-0 thanks to a William Gomez goal. And in the second leg, we would continue to walk all over them as we would win 2-0, meaning we had beat Real Madrid 3-0 on aggregate and put us through into the semifinals, where in the semifinals, we would play Chelsea and the first leg would end as a 2-2 draw. And for the second leg, despite not having Cresswell due to a red card and Lukeba being injured, we were somehow, someway able to pull out a 4-2 victory in a game that went to overtime against Chelsea in the second leg, meaning for the first time in Crystal Palace history, they were through to a Champions League final. Where in that final, we would be playing an interesting opponent in RB Leipzig. But before we get into that, looking back at the Premier League, it was not so great, as at the end of the season, we ended up finishing in 8th place in the Premier League with a whole lot of draws. It seemed like the focus for the season was the Champions League, and I am so fine with that. And a special shout out to our right winger William Gomez, who had an incredible campaign and the main reason for our success, having 39 goals and 10 assists across all competitions, as well as a huge increase in clean sheets this season, mainly due to our French goalkeeper Robin Reiser, who took over the starting role over Dean Henderson. And finally, a quick look at our squad before we get into the Champions League final. I'm really happy with where this team went. William Gomez is an 89 and Yeremy Pino is an 88, and not to mention a bunch of 87s in the rest of this team. And if you're still watching at this point, that must mean you're enjoying the video so far, so it would mean a lot to me if you would like and subscribe down below. We're trying to help this channel grow, and that is the best way to do so. But without further ado, let's get into the Champions League final. And to start off the Champions League final, only 7 minutes into the match, we had a great chance. The ball was played out wide to William Gomez, who whipped in a ball to Yeremy Pino, but unfortunately his shot hit the crossbar and we were denied a first goal. And only a couple minutes later, once again Dest would find William Gomez out wide, who was swinging another ball to Yeremy Pino, but this time his shot was saved. Leipzig would get a chance of their own, but luckily it was their left back David Hanko, and he absolutely fluffed the shot. But once again, we were on the attack. Yeremy Pino would receive the ball in the box and clearly would get taken out by Leipzig's defender, earning us a penalty. Wait, ref! Despite the clear match fixing, 10 minutes later, we would have another chance. Dest would sweat it across goal, but it would unfortunately be cleared. But it would only go as far as Manzambi at the top of the box, who would find Yeremy Pino and would finesse it with his right foot, and somehow, someway, that ball ended up in the back of the net, goalkeeping shades of prime Karius. And only a couple minutes later, Lucas Stassen would find Yeremy Pino through on goal, and with his left foot smash it across net, and he wasn't going to miss from there, giving us a 2-0 lead. Which meant by halftime, we were sitting comfortable up by 2. But in the second half, Leipzig came out firing. Jan Diamande would absolutely expose me in the box and finesse it with his left foot past our goalkeeper, giving them a 1 on the scoreboard. But luckily, in the 64th minute, after putting on a bit of pressure, we would recycle the ball back into the box for William Gomez to turn and shoot past Leipzig's goalie, giving us another 2-goal lead. And just to rub some salt into the wound, in the 87th minute, this time William Gomez would find Lucas Stassen and just barely be able to get his shot off, which would find the bottom left corner of the net, giving us a 4-1 lead. So as the final whistle blew, we had officially won the Champions League title 4-1 over RB Leipzig. So we had officially done it. We had won Crystal Palace a Champions League title, and it would be club captain who we signed, Charlie Cresswell, to lift the Champions League trophy for Crystal Palace. And if you're still watching to this point, make sure to like and subscribe down below. This style of video is a little bit different than what I'm used to, so let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this style or you want me to go back to usual. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.